The rain had a way of making the city feel smaller, like everything important was happening within a few wet blocks and nowhere else mattered. Aaron Whitman stood under the narrow awning of a closed pharmacy, watching water slide down the glass and pool at the curb. He used to hate rain because it delayed meetings and ruined shoes that cost more than most people's rent. Now it just meant the night would be colder. At 49, Aaron had once been a man people waited for. CEOs checked their phones when his name appeared. Politicians returned his calls. He built a financial firm that specialized in restructuring, a polite word for taking broken companies, stripping them down, and selling the useful parts for profit. He was good at it. Precise. Calm. Detached. He told himself detachment was professionalism. Feelings complicated numbers. People complicated outcomes. His apartment used to sit high above the river, all glass and clean lines. He remembered how quiet it was up there, the kind of quiet that came from being far away from other people's lives. He filled that silence with work, with late nights and early mornings, with assistants who managed everything except loneliness. His wife left years ago, tired of competing with a calendar that never had room for her. His son stopped calling not long after. Aaron noticed, then chose not to notice. The collapse didn't feel real at first. A regulatory shift. A deal that unraveled. An internal report that surfaced at the wrong time. Aaron had signed off on decisions that were technically legal but morally thin, and when the climate changed, thin wasn't enough. Clients pulled out. Investors panicked. The firm hemorrhaged value. Lawsuits came next, slow and suffocating, draining resources and reputation together. He told himself he could handle it. He always had. But control is a habit that breaks hard when it finally snaps. Within a year, the apartment was gone. The accounts were frozen. The firm dissolved into quiet emails and unanswered calls. Friends he once hosted for expensive dinners now sent short messages full of sympathy and distance. Aaron learned how fast respect turns into caution. He learned how silence can feel louder than anger. The first night on the street, he didn't sleep. He sat with his back against a brick wall, coat pulled tight, eyes scanning shadows. The city sounded different down there, closer and less forgiving. Every footstep felt like a question. Hunger curled in his stomach like an accusation. He thought about the choices he'd made, the corners he'd rounded without looking down, and wondered when exactly the fall had started. Across town, a few blocks from a shelter that was already full, Denise Harper finished her shift at a 24-hour diner. Her feet ached in a familiar way, the kind of pain that meant she'd worked hard enough to justify the exhaustion. She counted her tips carefully, already planning which bills could be paid and which would have to wait. At 42, Denise lived in a small apartment with her younger brother, Marcus, who drifted between jobs and trouble. She loved him anyway, the way you love someone you can't fix. Denise had learned resilience early. Their mother died when Denise was 20, leaving behind debt and responsibility. Denise took both without complaint. She worked. She adapted. She learned how to stretch meals and patience. Loss didn't make her bitter, it made her observant. She noticed who needed help before they asked. She noticed who pretended they didn't. She noticed Aaron the second time she saw him, sitting near the bus stop with his shoulders squared in a way that didn't belong to the street. He didn't beg. He didn't look away when people passed. He just sat there, eyes tired, pride fraying at the edges. The first time, she walked past. The second time, she hesitated. The third time, she brought him a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. "You don't have to," he said quickly, reflexively, as if refusing kindness were a professional skill. "I know," Denise replied. She placed it beside him anyway. Still. They didn't talk much at first. A nod. A quiet thank you. Shared silence that felt less heavy than being alone. Over days, then weeks, words began to fill the space between them. Simple things. The weather. The bus schedules. Which shelters were safer than others. Aaron never said who he had been. Denise never asked. On the street, pasts were fragile things. You handled them gently or not at all. Hunger changes a person. It narrows the world. It strips away pretense. Aaron learned how to listen without waiting to speak. He learned how to be invisible. He learned that dignity didn't disappear when money did, but it did get tested daily. Denise taught him small rules of survival: where to stand when the wind turned sharp, how to read a room before stepping inside, when to stay quiet because silence could keep you safe. There were nights when they shared a bench, rain soaking the concrete, city lights blurring into streaks. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. The quiet between them grew familiar, almost comfortable. Aaron found himself looking for her in crowds, measuring time by her shifts. Denise noticed the way his posture softened, the way his eyes didn't scan exits as often. The turning point came quietly, the way most real ones do. Marcus disappeared one night. Didn't come home. Didn't answer his phone. Denise searched until dawn, fear tightening her chest with every unanswered call. When she finally found him, it was at the hospital. A fight. A knife. Nothing fatal, but close enough to leave her shaking. She sat in the waiting room, exhausted and hollow, staring at the floor. Aaron sat beside her without asking. He didn't try to fix anything. He didn't offer advice. He just stayed. When the doctor finally came out with cautious good news, Denise cried into her hands, and Aaron looked away, giving her privacy without leaving. Later, outside, she told him everything. The fear. The years of carrying responsibility. The anger she never allowed herself to feel. Aaron listened, something heavy loosening in his chest. For the first time in years, someone trusted him with pain instead of expectations. Weeks later, the truth surfaced. A former colleague recognized Aaron at a shelter and said his name out loud. The sound of it cut through the room. Denise heard it. Later, she asked him directly. Not accusing. Just honest. He told her everything. The firm. The money. The choices. The fall. Denise didn't react the way he expected. She didn't get angry. She didn't look impressed. She just nodded slowly, absorbing it. Doesn't change who you are now, she said finally. Only explains how you got here. The consequences didn't disappear. Aaron didn't suddenly get his life back. But something shifted. He started volunteering at the diner, fixing small things, helping where he could. He used what skills he still had to help people navigate paperwork, benefits, legal forms. Denise watched him work, saw the way purpose returned to his movements. Months later, when Aaron finally found steady work, not glamorous, not powerful, but honest, he didn't measure success the same way. He rented a small place. He invited Denise and Marcus over for dinner. The food was simple. The laughter wasn't. On a quiet evening, sitting on the steps outside his building, Aaron watched the city lights flicker on. He thought about the view he once had, how high he'd been, how far he'd fallen. He realized that the fall had stripped away the noise and left something real behind. True wealth, he understood now, wasn't about standing above others. It was about standing with them, especially when it would be easier not to. The city kept moving. The rain came and went. And for the first time in a long while, Aaron felt like he belonged somewhere, not because of what he owned, but because of who he chose to be.